I'm 23 and I've been friends with Susanna since we first met in high school. I moved from a different area to the school and so I did not know anybody at all. On the first day, I made friends with Susanna and my other best friend Helen, and we've been an inseparable trio ever since. Helen and I both went to university, but as we have an amazing university in our home city, we didn't leave. It seemed pointless to run up a lot of debt, paying for accommodation in a new place when our parents have said we could just live at home while we were at university for free. Susanna did not go to university. She never enjoyed school very much and she would be absent a lot due to illness, so she missed out on so many lessons that she did not get the results she would need to go to university. Instead, she started to work as a hairdresser, as an apprentice, and worked her way up to being a good stylist in the company. It was very useful as she would do our hair for a reduced price. I did nursing at university and Helen did dentistry. Both of us finding jobs in our hometown, and I guess we're just close to our families that we did not want to move away from them. Helen met a guy at university, Jack, and they got married 6 months ago. I was the chief bridesmaid and Susanna, was a bridesmaid too, and I was a little confused why Helen had put me above Susanna in the bridesmaid ranking, but Susanna seemed to be fine with it. She said it's just a tradition to have a head bridesmaid, and so it's fine. She laughed and said it meant that I had to organize all the pre-wedding stuff, so I had all the hard work to do, which meant she'd be able to relax a bit and just turn up and look pretty. Susanna did Helen's hair and makeup as a wedding gift. Unfortunately, the wind was stronger than it looked and her hair came down during the ceremony. Susanna was really upset. A couple of Helen's relatives said that Susanna had deliberately messed up Helen's hair, but that was ridiculous as she was never that cruel. Some people just like to gossip and see things that are just not there. Helen went away on a honeymoon with Jack, and Susanna and I carried on as normal. 3 months later, Susanna surprised us and announced that she was pregnant. Once a month, the three of us go out for a girls' night, where we have a meal, a few glasses of wine, and then go to see a movie or just hang out. We had just finished eating when Susanna said she had something to tell us. We thought she was going to tell us that she was moving away, so she had been saying that for a while, that her boss was so happy with her work that he was considering moving her to be a manager of his other business in a city around 4 hours away from here. We were not expecting her to tell us that she was, pregnant, as she had never mentioned a man in her life before, and we thought that we would have known if she was dating somebody. So, we obviously asked the obvious question, right? Who is the father? And weirdly, she gets defensive and said that it's just a one-night stand with somebody from work. It was after a work function get-together, and they were not together exclusively. She said that she, had not told him, and that she had no intention of telling him as he didn't even need to know. She was adamant that she would be absolutely fine on her own. Helen and I looked at each other surprised at how aggressive Susanna was being about this, but hey, we agreed. It's not our decision to make, and she was our friend, so we would do what she wanted. Susanna had seemed to calm down a bit after we vowed not to tell anybody who Susanna had not agreed we could tell. She also did not plan to tell her family as she said they were not close, and they simply did not need to know. Susanna's mom was a single mother and she had moved away from the area a few years before just to live with the man she met on the internet, leaving Susanna to fend for herself. The only other relatives she had were an aunt and cousin who lived about an hour away. I'd met her cousin Kelly once, but she was older than us, and Susanna seemed to hate being near her, and so we did not stay for very long. This was just before Susanna's mom moved away, and we had not seen anything of them since. We said that her family would most likely find out when Susanna had the baby, and it might be better to get it out of the way. But she was not happy to tell them, so we dropped the matter. Susanna told us that it was very early days in the pregnancy, and she had found out early she was very in tune with her body, and so she would maybe tell people once she was further along and it became obvious that she was in fact pregnant. I mentioned that it'd be hard to hide when her belly got big, and with the guy at work, not put two and two together and work out that maybe, just maybe, this is his baby. Susanna seemed a little worried about that question and did not answer it, so we assumed that she did not want to talk about it and we just left it alone. This all happened a few months back, and we've been looking after Susanna between us, and she had an awful morning sickness, was very weak and tired all the time. She lives on her own, and so on occasion she has spent a few days with either Helen or me. I live with my boyfriend, George, and he's been really understanding as his sister had a rough pregnancy. I think he was a little annoyed about how demanding Susanna was all the time, as she seemed to be wanting to wait hand and foot every single second of the day. Every day I take a couple of days off work to sit with her, but that was just a one-off thing when she was in a really bad place. She would have done the same for me. The sickness has thankfully worn off for the most part, and Susanna's starting to enjoy being pregnant, and she has a lovely little bump, which she enjoys, and she talks to her baby all the time. It's lovely to see her becoming attached to her baby. I hate to say this, but Susanna is quite a self-centered type of person in a lot of ways, and I was not sure how she would cope with sharing her life with a baby, but she is loving every single minute of the pregnancy. She has her scan tomorrow just to see whether the baby is a boy or a girl. And then we're going to start to decorate the spare room in her apartment for the nursery. She's hoping for a little girl, but she will be fine either way. She's still working, and it's now obvious that she's pregnant, and I'm just worried that her good feeling will collapse when the guy who's the father realizes that the dates of her pregnancy line up when they were intimate, and there's going to be trouble in paradise. I don't know. I'm in two minds as to whether it's right or wrong to keep this from him. I don't know anyone from her work, as she keeps her work and home life very separate, which, I totally understand. I never want to bring my work home with me either, but this is different. This guy is going to be a father, and it seems to me that as Susanna is going to be a single mother, the least that he could do would be there just to provide for her and the baby. It'll be a struggle for Susanna on her own. She'll have to take time off of work when she's near giving birth and the baby's born. How's she going to work with a young child? She has no family nearby, and the ones that are closest to us, she doesn't want to talk about the baby. Helen and I both have full-time jobs that are very demanding. I work in a busy hospital, and I do long shifts both days and nights, so I can't be relied on to look after the child regularly. Also, I'm not sure George would be happy to have a baby around all the time, as he's a doctor at the same hospital as me and junior doctors work, and an exhausting number of hours each week. We had talked about having our own baby down the line, but it's not going to work until he becomes a more senior doctor and has better money and hours. We're getting married later this year, which by the way will be amazing. Everything's booked and I can't wait. I think I'm here to ask that question. Does this guy have a right to know that his one-night stand resulted in a baby? If he's not given a chance, then how could she know whether he will be a good father or not? I'm really close to my father, and I think unless there's a genuine reason for a parent to not be in a child's life, surely it's the healthiest for them to have both parents to help them grow and develop. I've not talked to Susanna about this yet. I don't want her to be upset. But I've been thinking about this non-stop. It's driving me mad. Maybe her family would be willing to help, if they only knew about it. What would you do? Would you tell them, or is this just a massive overstep? Let me know. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. So today's story is one heck of a drama. We have 3 updates to get into, and we're going to see if OP went ahead and, as she quoted it, overstepped the boundaries. Here's update number 1. Let's jump right into it. I actually forgot about this post as I typed it one night when I was tired and just fed up with everything, and I was just frustrated with Susanna that particular day. She had been whining a lot, and I just finished a very long shift. The answer to the last post agreed with what Helen, Jack, and Matt said to me, that it was not my place to tell anybody, and I've not said a word to anyone. Susanna's getting bigger now, and her pregnancy is going very well. She had the scan and found out that she's having a little girl, and who she's going to call Jasmine. I've offered to go to the hospital appointments with her, but she has insisted that she wants to go on her own, as being capable of doing everything on her own is something that she'll have to get used to when she's single parent. Unfortunately, the guy at work realized that he had to be the father to the baby and made things so hard for Susanna at work. She had to leave. I don't know exactly what happened, but she said that once he worked it out, he told everybody at work that she had tried to trap him into a relationship by deliberately getting pregnant. And because, yeah, he is the popular guy at work, every single person seemed to have taken his side. And they made her life a living hell. I was furious, and Helen and I were ready to march down to her work and have it out with her manager for letting this happen. Susanna cried and begged us not to do that as she could not handle the stress when she was pregnant, so we just left it. Of course, there was not this massive problem and that Susanna did not have an income source now and no way to pay for her rent. Where we live, you can get help from the state for rent and such, but if you leave a job voluntarily, it's much harder to convince the government to help you as they want to know why you walked away on a good job, leaving yourself without an income asking for their help. Susanna did not want to make an issue of the whole pregnancy thing, and so it was taking a long time to sort her any money. In the meantime, she fell behind with rent, and her landlord kicked her out. She turned up right here on my doorstep, one evening crying with just a bag of clothes, saying she has nowhere to go, and she's been living in our spare room ever since. I'm so angry with her landlord for kicking a pregnant woman out of the street, and have told Susanna that she needs to talk to a lawyer, and she had an appointment sometime this week. Unfortunately, we were all at work, but she said that she'll be okay, as she has all the letters and appointments from the hospital and her last payslip so that she can handle things. She's taking all this very well, better than I would have. Last night we went for a meal as a group, but at the last minute Susanna was feeling ill and she did not come. Helen, Jack, George, and I went for a meal, and in a way it was good that Susanna was not there, as we could talk about how we were going to help her without being upset or trying to say she was okay and trying to stop us. Helen and I were so worried about her, and we said that until the baby was born, we need to make sure that she's safe and looked after. Susanna had such an awful childhood, being sick all the time and missing school, and then her mother abandoned her, that we just wanted her to feel that we were all there for her at this time. I had some savings that my grandparents have left me, and Helen was not short of money, so we said we want to buy all the things that Susanna would need for the baby until she could get her money situation sorted out. George agreed, but pointed out that I had to remember we were also paying for our wedding, and so we had to make sure we did not leave ourselves in a position where we could not pay our vendors, or for the venue and stuff like that. I said that would not be a problem as we had a separate bank account for the wedding. Now, this is where I expected George to push back, but I was amazed that he was just fine with it. I said that the money in the account from my grandparents was something I was saving for. I was saving up for the honeymoon. But at the moment, I felt that going on a honeymoon when only one of my best friends was having a child with no income felt like it was just bad taste. George thought about it and agreed that we should have a smaller honeymoon to begin with, and then once Susanna had got her finances back in order, she could pay us back in small bits and we could have a big honeymoon for our first anniversary. I was so happy I had found this amazing man. The only downside of the night was Jack, who was not as convinced as the rest of us that we should be doing this, as, in his opinion, Susanna was the type of person who would take everything and give nothing back. I knew he was not as keen on Susanna as we were, as he was sure that she had deliberately messed up Helen's hair at the wedding just to be spiteful. He's a police officer, and I think it's just in his nature to be suspicious. We took his opinion in hand and agreed to be careful, but we would not let Susanna and her baby struggle. When we got home, I went into Susanna's room and told her that we had decided, but not what Jack had said for obvious reasons, and she was so happy that she cried. She promised that when her money was sorted out, she would set up a repayment plan for any money that we had spent and pay us back every single penny. She was thankful when I said she could stay with us, as moving house while pregnant or with a newborn baby was too much for anybody. We have a 3-bedroom house, so there's room. I told her we could start looking for things for the nursery in the next week or so, as I had annual leave coming up and I was planning to go wedding shopping, so we could do the baby shopping as well. Susanna cried and said she would do all the hair and makeup for my wedding, and as she would be heavily pregnant by the wedding, she understood if I did not want a, quote, fat little bridesmaid, but I told her not to be silly. Of course, I want her to be next to me when I get married to George. Things are looking good, and I've even told Susanna she does not need the father of the baby or her family, as she has us, and we will look after her. I'm glad I did not make the decision to tell either the father or her family, as I always just would have ruined my friendship with Susanna, and that is not what I want. Update number 2. I'm really bad for updating this thing, I'm just bad at it. But from what I've seen on the other post, people only seem to write on here when life sucks or things are not as you think they should be. Guess what? That's why I'm back. This is going to be a long post, so buckle up, it's a bit crazy. As I said in my last update, Susanna moved in with George and me, and things were going well. After she moved in, I had a couple of weeks of annual leave, and so we spent a lot of time and money buying things not only for my upcoming wedding, but also for the baby. Do you know how expensive it is to have a baby? I didn't until we went shopping. How can one teeny tiny human be needing so much stuff? Why is everything related to babies so freaking expensive? We actually had a good time over those 2 weeks, and Helen joined us on her days off. We bought everything the nursery needed, as well as a mountain of nappies, clothes, and so many other things that a baby could need. I also got some maternity clothing for Susanna, as her belly was growing at an alarming rate. Everything was going so well, and we were all enjoying life as we had 2 things to look forward to: my wedding and a new baby. Her baby was due 2 weeks after the wedding, and time passed and we arranged a baby shower for Susanna. It was a pretty small one where we invited a couple of mutual friends and some friends of mine and Helen's. Susanna did not have many friends now that she was not at work, and she only really hung out with her work friends other than us. This is where things began to change. It was at the baby shower that the things started to get weird. One of my friends, Jenny, works in the maternity unit at the same hospital as me, and when Susanna found out that she did, well, she got very cold towards me. I was not sure what the problem was until Jenny started to ask Susanna questions about her pregnancy, and Susanna got very annoyed. She said that she did not want to talk about the details of her pregnancy today, and she just wanted to celebrate that she was going to be a mother. Jenny, to her credit, apologized and said that it was a fault of her part, as she always went into work mode. Susanna also apologized and said she was so emotional all the time. Jenny just smiled and said that was very normal at that point, but her eyes said something different. After the baby shower, Jenny pulled me to one side and said that she was worried about Susanna as she looked, quote, different to a pregnant woman of her stage normally would, and it might be worth having her go to the doctor just to check up and see that she seemed to be very lethargic, emotional, and her belly was out of proportion, so it may be a sign that there was an issue with Susanna or the baby. I thanked her and said that Susanna was unpredictable and that I would find a way to broach the topic. I thought that Jenny was being overcautious, but I'm not a maternity nurse, so I have no idea. This was the first sign that something was not well with Susanna's pregnancy, and when I mentioned that Jenny had thought she looked a bit pale and maybe she should check to see she was not anemic or something, Susanna took it pretty well and promised to go see her doctor, which she did, and she came back saying everything was fine. We were not only a couple weeks away from the wedding day, and so I was focused on that, but I also just accepted Susanna's word that everything was fine. She was looking forward to holding her daughter, and so why would I ever think she had not gone to the doctor like we told her to? Everything was in place for the wedding, and I was excited. George and I were going on a short honeymoon following the wedding, so I would be back for when the baby was born, and I was going to be Susanna's birthing partner. She had insisted that we keep recordings of how much we spent so that she could pay us back, and at this point we had spent around 12,000 euros for everything that we needed. This was for the nursery, the pram, nappies, formula, and the baby shower. The cost would hit about 20,000 euros, as we were buying her a cheap second-hand car, as she was thinking that she would take her hairdressing mobile, so she could take the baby with her to the client's house. She had protested a bit at this, but she needed to have her hairdressing supplies, as she also never needed her own when she worked at the hairdresser's. Everything was provided. Buy products of salon quality was expensive to do, but I had the money, and so I was investing in my friend's future. She had asked me to be a godparent to her daughter, and so I saw it as the investment in my goddaughter's life as well. I think George was not as convinced about this, but it was my money to do this with as I wished. Looking back, I realized I should have listened to him more. Anyways, everything was in place for the wedding, and the third bedroom was set up as a nursery was ready for the arrival of the baby Jasmine. It was an exciting time, and things would be so hopeful for all of us. Helen and I were looking forward to being aunties and having a baby to love and spoil in preparation for the day we had our own children. A couple days before the wedding, Helen arranged a girls' lunch, just to give me a break from planning and all my family who were arriving from all over the country. I was exhausted. I'd finished work now for the wedding and the honeymoon, and this was just what I needed, just to take my mind off of everything. A nice lunch and an afternoon with my best friends. We were sitting in our favorite restaurant chatting when Susanna suddenly said she wanted to leave and got all frantic and upset. We did not understand what was happening until we saw some of her work colleagues, and one was a guy around our age. Susanna had already practically run from the room, so I went after her whilst Helen settled the bill. This is when we found that the guy Martin was the father of Susanna's baby, and she did not want him to see her. I was angry at her workmates and would have loved to have gone and given them a piece of my mind, especially her boss, but Susanna was so upset we just left. After the wedding, I was determined that Martin should be paying for the baby, and he could pay George and me back for some of the things that we bought for, his baby. As we left, Helen nudged me and pointed at Susanna, and she said, "Is it just me, or had Susanna's bump, moved?" I looked over, and it did look a bit different, because, well, neither of us had any experience with pregnancy bumps. Or maybe because we are idiots, we just assumed it meant the baby was trying to make an early appearance or something. We rushed Susanna home and told her to rest, which she did until the morning of the wedding. The day of my wedding should have been the best day of my life, but instead, it turned out to be the start of the beginning of an absolute nightmare. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and do another update, simply because I need to get my head around it. This is like a setup for the worst few days of my life so far, so stay tuned for a story that will not seem out of place in a movie. Update number 3. This is the final post by OP. Wedding day. The happiest day in a girl's life, unless your best friend is a heartless psycho. The morning of my wedding was beautiful, the sun was shining, and everything was going to plan. Susanna did all of our hair and makeup, and we were so happy. She seems out of sorts, but not in a moody way, just more like she was uncomfortable. To be fair, being that fat would make life hard, I suppose. We left for the wedding, and I married the man who I loved more than life itself and who I'll listen to more in the future as he is much more sensible than I am. The wedding ceremony went great, and we had our pictures taken. It was towards the end of the photos when I asked for one to be taken of me, Helen, and Susanna, that we noticed she was missing. We could not find her anywhere, and obviously we were starting to get worried sick. Had something happened to her? I panicked and thought she must have gone into labor and just taken herself off somewhere. We asked in the hotel where we got married, but they had not seen her or even called an ambulance for anybody. I grabbed Ginny and explained that Susanna was missing, and she said she'd call the hospital and ask her colleagues if Susanna was there. Maybe she did not want to disturb my wedding, so she had gotten a taxi to the maternal hospital. Ginny said she had been keeping an eye on Susanna as she had looked upset or worried about something, so maybe she went into labor and just went to do not disturb my day mode. Jack overheard and laughed, saying there's no way Susanna would not have taken the chance to make my day all about her. He really doesn't like her. Helen told him that he was not being helpful and just to shut up. Ginny came back looking concerned and said that Susanna was not there. But when her colleague had checked the files, there's no record of Susanna ever being under their care. Well, this was very worrying. I was starting to panic at this point, and my family was waiting for George and me to do our first dance. I wanted to keep looking for Susanna, but Jack and Helen said that they would handle it, and I should go to my husband. I did, and we got through the dance and speeches before I spoke to Helen again. We still have no idea where Susanna went, and I was really worried. Just as I was about to suggest that we call the police, Susanna sent me a text message saying that she was sorry she left but did not want to ruin my day, but she was in fact in labor and having the baby. Well, I messaged her back asking her where she was because we called the hospital and she's not there. Susanna did not reply for ages, and the next we heard was that the baby had been born and was healthy. So I asked again, okay, well, where are you? But she didn't reply. We just carried on with the wedding the best that we could, but it was spoiled by the worry of not knowing where Susanna had gone. When we got home, she was not there. She was not at the hospital where I worked, and we wondered if she had gone to a different one. So we literally called every single one around us, but she was nowhere to be found. I'd not gone upstairs at this point. I was just totally focused on finding Susanna. I was still in my wedding dress, for goodness sake, and Helen and Jack were with us. Finally, after ages, we got a message from Susanna with the blurry picture of the baby. It was around that time that Jack went upstairs to the bathroom, and when he got there, he came back and he said, "She's not going to be coming back. Everything's gone." Susanna had come back and emptied the nursery and her room, and every single thing was gone. It didn't make any sense. She was no longer replying to phone calls or text messages, and George was looking at the picture on my phone with a strange look on his face. Finally, he said, "I hate to make this situation worse, guys. That's not a baby. That's a doll." So here's the finale of the story, guys, of how my friend made a fool of all of us and stole a fortune from me. She was never pregnant. She was wearing a fake belly that she bought online and lived in a house with 2 medically trained people and literally fooled us both. There was never any baby. She had realized that she could not carry this one any longer and had used my wedding as a smokescreen to take what she had gotten from us and leave. In the weeks that followed, we found out a few more crucial bits of information. She did not want us to approach Martin, who she worked with, as that would have exposed one of her lies. She never had a relationship with him. Oh, how do we know that? Probably because he's a gay man with a husband. If we had approached her family, which we did after the fact, we would have found out that the illness she had at school was also fake, and she just didn't want to go to school. Her mother had not abandoned her. She also has been in contact literally the whole time. And get this, she was the one running the scam, right there behind the scenes. We found out that during the wedding, Susanna's mother and her partner had come and emptied the nursery and Susanna's room, and Susanna had left the wedding to help and take care of everything that we gave her. Oh yeah, and take the car that we bought her. Then they left just like that, and well, they left behind a present. We have no idea where they are, and I have spoken to both the police and a lawyer, and unless we find them, there's no hope that we'll see my 20,000 euros again. I'm so upset at being scammed by a woman I called my best friend. We've talked to her cousin Kelly a lot in the 2 weeks, and we realize now that Susanna has lied to us since we were at school. She's a fantastic scam artist, like her mother, and between them they've scammed people for so much money. I wish I could have, given you more of a happy ending, but I can't. I've lost my money, the car that I've bought her, been betrayed by my so-called best friend, and everything's awful. I fell in love with a baby that doesn't even exist. Maybe one day I'll be able to update this that we found her and got our revenge, but for now, take this as a warning. Trust nobody.